Hi guys, and welcome to this quick TA session on drawing trend lines. In this session we're going to have a look at the chart and draw some different types of trend lines. I'm going to explain the characteristics of each of those. Yeah, let's start right away. As you can see, I have a clean chart of Bitcoin here. It's the 6-hour chart. So the first thing you want to do if you want to draw trend lines is zoom out. Maybe the daily chart, for example, and yeah, you have this candlestick chart. You can actually look at the wicks and draw trend lines from there, or you can look at the candle bodies. For example, the candle closes and opens up here or down here. So you want to look for these edges in market price action and connect them with a trend line. You can do this by using the TradingView tools. For example, the standard trend line tool. You can also use the ray tools. The ray tools are probably a little bit better for beginners to use because if you enable this anchoring here, you can the cursor is automatically aligned with the candle structure here, so with the wicks and candle bodies. So you have very precise trend lines like this. I'm going to make this a little bit thicker, like this. So yeah, the ray tool is pretty cool to use. As you can see, you can easily connect wicks price action like this. But you can also use the trendline tool and draw it without the anchoring, for example, and draw it like you want it to draw. So this is for those who have a feeling or already know how to adjust trend lines manually. It doesn't always have to be very precise with the wicks and candle bodies, for example. You could, if you say, hey, no, this is not the trend line I want to draw. It's connecting the wicks, but it's not that what I want, because I want the wicks over here as well. So you can align this manually like this. So it's running actually through this wick here, but it's hitting those 4 wicks here. So you can adjust your trend lines like this. Okay. The first type of trend lines we're going to draw is the outlier trend line. It's basically the trend line that is connecting outlying wicks and candle bodies. This kind of trend line is not broken. This is very important. So we are going to we're staying on the daily chart on the logarithmic time frame, and we are going to connect this high and, for example, this high. I'm using the ray tool for this. And I'm drawing it like that. Here you can see this trend line hasn't been crossed yet. This is very important. So it's connecting outlying price action here, wicks and candle bodies. And as you can see, price didn't get above yet. This is important because it has a certain impact on how you do analysis on these trend lines. You can also draw a bottom trend line, for example. You connect this low and maybe this low over here. And here you can see now you have a trend line connecting this price action and you have a trend line connecting this price action. Both haven't been crossed yet. So yeah, this could be a space for price to move in. You have now applied some structure to the chart, and you can see maybe this is the range where price will move. Can now start by simply adding 2 lines. You can start doing analysis on it, interpretation, and you can come up with potential trading plans like this. For example, you could say, hey, I'm going to go long here, buy here with a stop loss, very tight stop loss. So if we break this trend line, yeah, it is probably it will probably go lower. So if this is your idea, you can buy here and put your stop loss here, and maybe we will see a bounce higher. The second type of trend lines is the internal trend line. It's a trend line that is running through existing price action, but is still very relevant. So for example, you could take, let me see, I'm just drawing something here, something like this. In Bitcoin, here you can see it's a trend line, but it is at the center of price action. So price is crossing it. You can see we have confirmation. We have confirmation of support here. We have confirmation of resistance in this region. Then we have confirmation of support again, confirmation of support, confirmation of support. A confirmation of support is whenever price approaches the entity. This is the entity, the trend line, and it bounces there, or it rejects there. like here. You can see that price tries to cross it, but it fails, and then ultimately it succeeds in crossing it and confirming support. Now we have crossed it again, so maybe we will see in the future, we will see an attempt to break it again and fail, a confirmation of resistance, and then maybe go above it. This is the way things work with trend lines like this. However, it doesn't work in all eternity. You have to keep in mind that this might be something that, if the trend line keeps on rising like this, and we go in this direction, it will become increasingly unlikely that we will return to that trend line at some point, because it's simply too high. So these are internal trend lines, and they can be really powerful. One thing to keep in mind about internal trend lines is that price likes to circle, to move around certain support and resistance entities, and trend lines are support and resistance entities that price really likes to stick to. So if you watch this trend line, for example, here, this is a different one. I had this one right now. This is also very possible to draw. If you see this, price is circling around. Okay, this is not a perfect example, but I think you get what I mean. Let me get a different example. This one, this is a level. You can also draw a trend line here. Like this, for example. This is also an internal trend line. As you can see, we have confirmation of resistance, confirmation of support, confirmation of resistance, confirmation of support, resistance, support, resistance, and then finally support again. So this is actually a trend line, an internal trend line, and we can see how price likes to move up and below, above and below, and then finally, distance itself from the trend line. So this is something that we see very often. I call this a local center of gravity, because a support and resistance object in price action, like a level or a trend line, they do have a gravity effect. So they are pulling price to it. And you can see this in price action when price is circling around something. Not all support and resistance entities become a center of gravity, but trend lines like this are very popular, and a lot of people are shorting when we are above, and a lot of people are longing when we are below. So this is something that is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now you can do this on all time frames. You can, for example, go to the 1 hour chart and look at trend lines there, like this one, for example. At some point, it doesn't take you much more than maybe 2 or 3 seconds to see a trend line on a chart. It's basically a matter of experience. When you're just starting out, it will probably take you a while to find good trend lines. But as the more you train yourself in watching charts and analyzing price action and seeing the structure and get a feeling for how price moves, the easier it is for you to find trend lines in a matter of seconds. So like this, for example. And there are also times when price is moving through the trend line, and it's still not it's still a trend line. I'm going to talk about this in a few seconds. So let me first, before we talk about fake out moves or failed breakouts, let me talk about trend lines that get broken. So the same logic that applies to levels, for example, with the first tests. I don't know if you have seen the session on first tests yet. If not, watch it. There you can see that levels that are left untested, when we see price coming back to them, we often see a rejection at the first test. This logic also applies to trend lines. So if we see a trend line like this and it gets broken here and price returns to this trend line, the likeliness is very high that price will fail to break through and maybe need a second attempt or a third attempt to break through. It could also reverse there. It's a potential point of rejection. So this is very important to keep in mind there. The final thing I want to talk about is when you sometimes have trend lines that where price action is not very obedient, but it's still a trend line. So let me give you an example. Maybe this one. Yeah, this is an example. So as you can see, it's not very intuitive to draw it like that. But as you can see, we have confirmation of resistances here. We have confirmation of, confirmation of support over here. We have confirmation of resistance over here. Resistance, resistance, support, resistance, support. So basically, this is a valid trend line. But it is really hard to see on the chart because price is moving up and down. It's not very obedient. It's not, playing by the rules here because it's crossing the trend line very often. Hard to see something like this. Basically, it's experience, so you have to see patterns and ignore outlying price action like this. This is very important. At some point, you will get to see these things. But to help you, you can zoom out on your chart. Like we're on a 1 hour right now. Let's look at this trend line on the 4 hour chart and see what is happening. And you will see that it's becoming more and more of a trend line, of an obvious trend line. Look like this. You can see it makes more sense now. More sense. And there's still this tiny outlier over here, this one. Maybe we can get rid of it by zooming out further. Here you have it. Here you can see we don't have any candle closes above, we only have wicks above. So this is actually a trend line on the daily chart you can draw. It's possible. If I were to extend it to the side, you can see that it was actually support over here as well and here. And finally, we broke it to the downside. So these kind of trend lines are more difficult to see, but they are there. So it's good if you know about that there are trend lines where price likes to move through. They are difficult to see, but sometimes you just have to zoom out on the chart to see the structure. So if I was on the daily chart, I would probably draw a trend line like this, and on the 1 hour chart, it looks like this. A little bit messy, but it's still okay. And this is why price action above and below a trend line, like this crossing price action where price crosses it, it's not super relevant. You have to check out on the higher time frames if this is also, if this candle closes, if these candle closes are also there on the higher time frames. If so, it could consider to be broken. It could consider it broken. But in this case, it's not. Except for this case where it's actually broken. This is it for trend lines. There will be more sessions on that. It's just a first session. And we will dive deeper into that at some point. Trend lines is a very, very, it's a big topic. There's a lot to talk about. There are a lot of techniques you have to, you can learn with trend lines. But this is it for now. Thanks, and on to the next session.